Hi, my name is Joe, and my friends in the RPG community have tricked me into making a series of videos where I talk about how to write an adventure. So let's do some quick introductions. I am Joseph R. Lewis of Dungeon Age Adventures, and I've written several dozen adventures for 5th edition, Old School Systems, and Cairn, including some things you might recognize like Raiding the Obsidian Keep and Nightmare Over Ragged Hollow. I also have lots of other little booklets like Saving Saxon and Witches of Frostwick, and as I said, a couple dozen more. I've also written a couple dozen fantasy novels, including the Angels and Djinn series, the Elf Saga series, the Ethereum series, the Zelda Price series. Lots of series this is. And I'm also, by day, a professional technical writer. And all of that is just to say I have a lot of writing experience. So the advice I'm about to give comes from all of that experience, but the big caveat is nothing I say is the one true way of how to do anything. This is just what I've learned, what I've used, and hopefully some of this will be useful to you too. With that out of the way, how do I write an adventure module? I'm going to break this process down into several steps. Each will have its own short video. And in this video, I'm going to talk about creating a vision or setting a goal for your adventure. This is a very simple step. It only takes a few minutes to do, but I think it's very important for any project, including a writing project. You want to be able to clearly define what your goal is so that you can have much better chance of actually achieving that goal or hitting it. It's also good to have that clearly defined goal so you can tell if you're getting off course or if you're doing too much work or the wrong work. So that's what we'll be doing first. We're going to define our vision. And what that really means is we're just going to write down 5 or 6 bullet points at the top of your notes document before you start writing. And again, this should just take a couple minutes. You probably already have most of these answers figured out in your head. We're just going to write it down before we get started on the real writing. So, first bullet, first thing we want to do, we want to define our style or the tone or the vibes. And this, for me, is usually just identifying a movie, a video game, or a TV show that I like and that I can see very clearly and hear very clearly in my head. And this is just something for me to reference just mentally while I'm writing, because I want to get the vibes consistent. I want to set the same tone throughout my writing process. It also helps me set up some guardrails. Am I getting too violent or scary or dark, or I'm getting too funny or cartoony or silly? And this keeps me on track as I go along. In addition to helping the writing process, having a clearly defined style or cultural reference point is very good for when you want to tell other people about what your adventure is. So if someone says, "What is the adventure you're working on?" you can say, "Oh, it's like an Indiana Jones movie." And they can say, "Oh, I like that. I'm interested." Or maybe they say, "I don't like that. I'm not interested." But either way, they will get that. They'll understand what you're saying in just a couple of words, and you've successfully communicated what your adventure's about, which is very useful. All right, second bullet point, we want to identify some kind of example of adventure design that we want to mimic, essentially. So if I'm trying to write a small tomb, I want to find or identify some other small tomb that I want mine to sort of be like, just to model after. I'm not copying it. I just need something to help define how big, how small, how many parts does my adventure need to have. So if I'm writing a small tomb, then maybe I want to be thinking about The Delian Tomb by Matt Colville or The Winter's Daughter by Gavin Norman. If I want to be writing a mega dungeon, then maybe I just want to have referenced in my mind something like Stonehill, Stonehell, or Barrow Maze, or Castles in Tillin. If I want to do an overland adventure, then maybe I'm thinking about ultraviolet grasslands. Or if I'm trying to mix together some of those concepts, maybe I want to be thinking about something like Deep Carbon Observatory. At any rate, I'm just trying to get a sense of scale and scope and how many parts, and maybe how many NPCs or characters, maybe even how many pages I need to write, just so I can again see, am I on track or am I getting off track? And none of this is written in stone. If I decide that my goal, my example, no longer fits with my plan, then I can change them. I can interchange. But again, defining your goal will help you along the way. The third thing I want to identify for my adventure in my vision statement, as it were, is the action. What action will the players be engaging in during this adventure? So, is this adventure a mystery where the action is to solve the mystery, to investigate? Is this some kind of dangerous environment or disaster where the action is to survive and escape? Is this a heist where the action is to sneak in and be stealthy and clever? Or is this some kind of battle where the action is to just fight and overcome the villains or the antagonist? Again, very simple to identify and define, but it will help keep you on track for, are you creating that same set of events? Are you setting your players up to do the same sorts of activities? And this is also something that is good to convey to the GM when they were trying to pick out your adventure, whether they want to do it. And it's something that the GM can then convey to the players. Do you want to be investigating? Do you want to be exploring? Do you want to be surviving? Do you want to be fighting? And this keeps everyone on the same page and will help make you more successful. Okay, bullet number 4. I want to clearly define the setting for my adventure. So where's my adventure taking place? Is it a building, like a castle or a temple or an abbey or a prison? Is it in the wilderness? Is it in the forest, mountains, the Underdark, the tundra? Is it taking place in a small village or in a large city? Is it taking place inside a single building like a house or an inn? Or is it taking place somewhere between locations? Is it taking place on the road? Again, another very simple bullet point, but it's something that's good to have clearly defined so you can keep that in mind as you're working. Okay, bullet point number 5, we want to identify the creatures that are going to be the highlight of our adventure. These won't be the only creatures, but they will be the main focus. And that means deciding whether or not this is an adventure about fae or undead, robots, aliens, demons, angels, regular people. It's good to have a sense of what is the primary focus, who will the players be interacting with, who should they expect, and then what kind of rules go along with fighting the undead or interacting with demons. Um, those are the kinds of things that, again, we want to convey to the GM and the GM can convey to the players so that everyone's on the same page and has the same expectations. There can certainly be a temptation, and I've given into it, to include lots of different creatures across lots of different genres because they're cool and it's exciting and it's fun. But my advice to you and to myself is always try not to try to suppress that instinct. Keeping a narrow scope keeps the adventure feeling coherent and focused, and it will also make it easier for you to write it. It will make it easier for the GM to run it. Everyone will have a better time, I think. Okay, we are now at bullet number 6, our last bullet, which is the story. We want to clearly define for ourselves what is the story that is going on that the players are going to walk into when they begin our adventure. And this should be something that we can state very clearly and simply in like 3 short sentences. So here's my example of a story description. Number 1, there was a witch who was in love with a wealthy miller. Number 2, the miller was killed by his greedy brother. And number 3, the grieving witch is now doing evil magic stuff to the village in revenge for the death of the miller. Okay, very simple. It sets up a lot of information that clearly defines what's going to happen for our players in this adventure. It tells us that we're probably in a village. We know the immediate backstory, what happened, yesterday. We know who the antagonist is, probably the witch. Maybe also the miller's brother, the murderer. It tells us who a bunch of the characters are. Again, we have the miller, the brother, the witch. We can identify a handful of regular villagers who are probably being affected. We can also identify what are the obvious locations that are going to be in our adventure. Uh, the mill, because we have a miller, the miller's home, the brother's home, the witch's home, the location of the murder. Um, these are all immediately suggested just by having a clearly defined story nugget. And again, it's important just to say that this is a small statement. This is not deep backstory. This is not deep lore. We're not going on and on about how we got here over thousands of years of development. This is just the action that's happening right now. Maybe this village was built on some interesting place and there are ruins left over. We're not worried about that right now. We're just worried about the situation that the players are going to interact with. And that's the core of our adventure story. And I think that's about it. Before I start writing an adventure, I want to have a clear vision for what my writing project is, whether that's a 2-page dungeon or a 100-page campaign. I want to identify the style, the design, the format, the action that the players are going to be engaging in, the setting where everything takes place, the main type of creatures that are being featured, and the core story that my players are going to interact with. So figure out what those items are, put those bullet points up at the top of your document, think about them all the time, reference them, glance at them, update them if necessary as you're working along. I promise this will help you keep on track, stay focused, and make sure that you actually hit your goal of writing the adventure that you wanted to create. And if you find that you have lots of ideas that aren't fitting into this format, that aren't working, that's fine. Take all those ideas, just put them in another document, and have them standing by for the next adventure that you write. Not everything has to fit in this one adventure. In fact, it's better if they don't. You should try to keep each adventure focused on being the best little adventure it can be on just whatever it is you want to do right now. And if you have lots of other cool ideas, great. They can be the focus of the next adventure, and it will be the best adventure it can be. But we want to keep that separate and be focused and just do one good job at a time. And I think that's all for now. So good luck out there.